we're going to break it apart. Donald Trump is showing American dominance right to Vladimir Putin's face. Let me continue. And various other subjects. This is one of my favorite parts. We both reflected on the great history of our nations and the fact we fought so successfully together in World War II, remembering that Russia lost tens of millions of people and we likewise lost so many. The intel community and the consensus in Washington, D.C. is that you shall never say a good word about Russian history or culture. Oh, it's just a gas station with nuclear weapons. No, Russian culture and history is very deep, very complex, somewhat beautiful, somewhat dark. Some of the greatest authors have come from Russia. Some of the greatest composers, some of the greatest achievements of humanity have come from Russia. That's not a society that I would live in. They don't respect freedom of speech or liberty the way we do, but they're the first man in space, from Dostoevsky to the great composers, to Trotsky and so many others. This is not a culture that we should scoff at. This is not just a gas station with nuclear weapons. They were once a world superpower, and they still have a sense of pride. And yes, they stepped up and helped us defeat the Nazis. Continues here. We each talked about the strength of our respective nations and the great benefit that we will someday have in working together. This is President Trump trying to offer, hey, why do we hate each other? And by the way, you're welcome to email me, freedom@charliekirk.com. Why do we hate Russia? Why is Russia an enemy of the United States? The cartels are an enemy of the United States. They're killing my neighbors in Scottsdale. The cartels are killing our fellow countrymen in Colorado, Ohio, every single day. I'm not saying we have to be best friends with Russia, but why do we hate Russia? Why do we hate them? Oh, they said angry things? They said mean things? What fundamental interest of ours is endangered by Russia? You can email me, freedom@charliekirk.com, and don't use abstractions. Don't say Putin's a bad man. What danger does Russia pose to us, except that we are close to a nuclear war because the former State Department was insistent on fighting them? A lot of countries do bad things. We do bad things. Our government has done bad things. Why do we hate Russia? No, seriously, make that argument. Come to our campus tour and tell me why we should be at war against Russia, because we basically are. We are at war with Russia via proxy. We have been in a hot kinetic war against Russia. And only thanks largely to Vladimir Putin's restraint do we not have missiles flying into America, because American missiles are flying into Russia. The whole Russian-Ukrainian project is largely built on, oh, Vladimir Putin wouldn't do that. Well, I thought he's a madman that's going to march through Europe. So which one is it? Is that Vladimir Putin is going to march all through Europe tomorrow, like Adolf Hitler? Or is it that, oh, don't worry, we can launch missiles into his hometown and do drone strikes in Moscow, but Vladimir Putin won't do that because he's smarter than that. So which one is it exactly? It's the Russian paradox. But first, as we both agreed, we want to stop the millions of deaths taking place in the war in Russia-Ukraine. Now, I don't know if it's been millions of deaths, but if you count famine, starvation, people that have been displaced, millions of lives have been irreversibly damaged, casualties, at least 1 million. So that's spot on. President Putin even used my very strong campaign motto of common sense. Now, let me tell you how the media is going to do this. I'm going to do the Rush Limbaugh right now. The media is going to attack Donald Trump, saying that Vladimir Putin flattered Trump and tried to play to his ego by using campaign motto, and then Trump gave him the whole farm. That's a bunch of nonsense. Don't fall for that. Instead, you have a dialogue happening one-on-one, not intel agency to intel agency, not bureaucrat to bureaucrat, not administrative state to administrative state. You have principal to principal. You have leader to leader. And by the way, if Vladimir Putin is using common sense, he's right. There is no common sense for us to continue to supply American weaponry in Ukraine. Towards what aim and objective? We both believe very strongly in it. We agreed to work together very closely. Oh, and here's the big news, everybody. Woo, it's the big one. You ready? It's going to shake the very body politic of D.C. You can feel the trembling, the screaming, the rancor. I can't believe they're going to do it. Oh, and I love this. This is my favorite part. We both agreed to visit each other's nations. That's right. President Donald Trump is going to go to Russia. You know who else went to Russia? Ronald Reagan went to Russia. So before you allow the media to propagandize you, Ronald Reagan visited Russia. That's right. Did you know that? During all the Cold War antagonism, Ronald Reagan stepped up like a baller and visited Russia. And yeah, Vladimir Putin should visit America. I don't know if he'll get a warm welcome or not a warm welcome, but I want to hear him out. I think Vladimir Putin should sit down for a long interview on the Charlie Kirk show. I think Vladimir Putin should sit down with a long interview with Joe Rogan. I think Vladimir Putin should go to Austin, Texas, and sit down with Joe Rogan, and let's hear his side out. I don't think he'll be into the marijuana stuff, but you never know. Have a little back and forth. Go on the Joe Rogan experience. Come to our country. We will treat Vladimir Putin respectfully. Now, I'm not his biggest fan. By the way, there's Ronald Reagan going to Russia. So before all these apparatchiks on TV start screaming and caterwauling about, oh, Trump's going to go to Russia, that's Ronald Reagan in the midst of the height of nuclear proliferation, visiting Russia. During all the caterwauling that we're going to go towards a nuclear apocalypse, that's Ronald Reagan visiting Russia. And I think Putin should come here. And he will be met with respect and honor and dignity. We're going to keep going through this because I've only made about halfway. But this is one of the more profound, promising developments against the insanity of this Russian-Ukrainian war that we've been involved in. And this is President Trump delivering not just on a campaign promise. This is above and beyond. This is Nobel Peace Prize stuff. Very promising. We're going to keep on breaking it down. Ruffgreens.com. That is ruffgreens.com/Kirk. Ever see your dog slowing down or having health issues and wonder what can I do to make them better? Well, add Ruff Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and you'll see changes that will amaze you, guaranteed. Invented by naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, Ruff Greens wants to invite you and your puppy to a Ruff Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, and improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, and improved heart health. Fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag today. That is ruffgreens.com/Kirk just to cover shipping. That is ruffgreens.com/Kirk. Ruffgreens.com/Kirk. You don't have to change your dog's food. Instead, you improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Ruff Greens. That is ruffgreens.com/Kirk. Ruffgreens.com/Kirk. Your allegiance should always be to your homeland, to your country. But just because the CIA tells you to hate Russia doesn't mean you need to hate Russia. President Trump is thinking outside the box for you, the American citizen, to avoid a senseless nuclear war. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. We will be back with the radio audience in just a second, but this is major, groundbreaking stuff. And the Mockingbird media, they're not going to know how to handle this. They're all purchased by the intel agencies and by the neoconservatives and the warmongers because they do everything they possibly can to try to get us into another unnecessary war. This is Trump at his best. This is peak Trump. This is 10 out of 10 Trump. This is why we worked so hard. This is why we chased ballots, why we registered voters. This is the Trump that we wanted in office. Uprooting all of the conventional norms, shaking up the matrix. Why can't we do that? Why not? And they don't have good answers. I cannot emphasize the profundity of what it will be for President Donald Trump to visit Russia. I think it's awesome. I think it is awesome. I think we'll show the Russian people that, no, we actually don't hate you. We're not at war with you. I don't want to kill Russians. Why do you want to kill Russians? If you do, there's something wrong with you, actually. I don't want to kill Ukrainians. What have they ever done to us? What? The cartels have done something to us, and yet we're afraid to even whisper at them. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. This is Trump at his best. It is 10 out of 10 Trump. This is why we work so hard to get him in office. That's why you work so hard to get him in office. That's why all of you guys knocked on doors and chased ballots and came to our Commit 100 program. Because we saw what Joe Biden and, well, not Joe Biden, the senior staff of Washington, D.C. were doing with this Russia conflict. They were barreling us blindly towards maybe a nuclear conflict, but definitely a hot war, which we were already funding, financing, and heavily involved in. And Trump is a true believer in making a deal. Go to Russia? Why not? Why can't I do that? Reagan did that. Why can't I go to Russia? Oh, no, you can't do it. Same reason he went to North Korea. Go sit down with Vladimir Putin. Strike a deal. End the killing. You see, but D.C. is full of below average operator bureaucrats that are infected with the same disease. It's not about peace, it's about war. It's not about prosperity, it's about a quagmire. President Trump continues. We have also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately, and will begin by calling Zelensky of Ukraine to inform him of the conversation, something I'll be doing right now. By the way, I think this is all incredibly interesting timing. JD is at the Munich Security Conference this weekend. Woof. Oh, the shadow government and the deep state, they are not happy. They want more people dead. The shadow government's fine, 1 million people dead. Let me be as morally clear as I possibly can. Joe Biden rejecting peace deals that, by the way, would have been even better for Ukraine in 2022 than they are today in 2025, which got over 1 million people killed. Joe Biden will be responsible for one of the greatest crimes against humanity of this generation. Probably up there with George W. Bush. Completely senseless. And Joe Biden and Tony Blinken and Kamala Harris and that entire cabal of criminals, they said, oh, no, we can't broker peace. But now the peace deal that is on the table is far better for Russia than the one if they would have accepted that. And we told them in Istanbul, you got to take this deal. Oh, no, can't do that because we can't bend the knee to Russia. And these people are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of women and children. I've asked Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's doing a great job, by the way. Great job. Marco Rubio, John Ratcliffe, Michael Walls, and more to lead negotiations. Steve Witkoff, I feel strongly we'll be successful. Millions of people have died in a war that never would have happened if I was president, but it did happen, so it must end. So no more lives should be lost. I want to thank President Putin for his time and effort with respect to this call, and for the release yesterday of Mark Fogle, a wonderful man that I personally greeted last night at the White House. By the way, here's the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Mark Fogle, Joe Biden didn't get him home. Right there, kissing the ground when he comes into America. And by the way, Zelensky says today that he hopes to finalize agreements with the United States at the Munich Security Conference that would ensure continued U.S. support for Ukraine as it fights Russian invasion. I'm totally against no more money for Ukraine. That's my stated position. You're on your own, buddy. End the war. We're not going to have another Afghanistan here. You're not coming into NATO. By the way, Pete Hegseth came out today and said no NATO. But no guaranteed assurances for Vladimir Zelensky. This guy is laundering money in every possible direction. He's running guns, probably back to the Mexican drug cartels. There's some evidence to suggest that. He's an intel op. He wants war. I believe this effort will lead to a successful conclusion, and hopefully soon. This all comes down to a fundamental question. What do we want with Ukraine and Russia? When war broke out, we were so clear on this program. We were so clear that this is not going to end well. And we asked the right questions, and unfortunately, 1 million people had to die to get us to the place here. Our long-term interest is clearly that we should be allies with Russia. Clearly. For our first 150 years, we were. And again, I want somebody to tell me, anyone in the intel operation, come up to me, please tell me, lawmaker, whatever, why do we hate Russia? Don't tell me because the CIA put you in some skiff and scared you with a bunch of woo-woo voodoo. Russia was an ally in the revolution. It was an ally in the Civil War. And yes, of course, they had the 1917 revolution, both in February and October of that year, that Vladimir Lenin led and changed that country profoundly. But when chips were down, we decided to ally with Russia against the Axis. We went into a Cold War, and then we won the Cold War, and we even said in a gesture we want them in NATO, and then our intel agency said no. They wanted to be involved in NATO. This is President Trump at his best, the peace president. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen joins us next.
back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. The House Subcommittee on the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency holding its first hearing on Capitol Hill today. The committee is chaired by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Today's hearing focused on Medicaid spending and what the Georgia Republican describes as, quote, rushing pandemic-era funding out the door without proper oversight mechanisms. The committee is expected to work hand-in-hand with President Trump to root out waste, fix broken payment systems, and investigate fraud schemes. Democrats are pointing out concerns about Elon Musk's influence in the federal government and potential conflicts of interest. Speaking of Elon Musk, he and his Department of Government Efficiency are continuing to find places to save your tax dollars. One of those places is the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. The federal research agency tracks the progress of America's students and is being hit with around $900 million in cuts from DOGE. As for the Institute of Education Sciences itself, it could be eliminated altogether after at least 169 contracts were terminated this week, accounting for much of the Institute's work. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates. The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and it just stepped up its enforcement for 2025. If you happen to owe back taxes or if you've got unfiled returns, do not wait for the IRS to come after you. Simply avoiding your tax troubles, probably one of the worst things you can do. Instead, getting ahead of this is the smart move, but never, ever, ever contact the IRS alone. Turn it over to the team at Tax Network USA. Why, you ask? Well, it's because not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, which means that they know which agents to deal with and which ones to avoid like the plague. Tax Network USA has proven strategies that are designed to settle your tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million. Their attorneys and negotiators have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Talk with one of their strategists for free and stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and put your IRS troubles behind you once and for all. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. That's tnusa.com/RAV.
Working radio show in the business. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, really quick. I want to tell you about one of our partners. It is My Patriot Supply. That is mypatriotsupply.com. mypatriotsupply.com. We've all seen the headlines: cyber attacks on our power grids, drones in the sky, violent attacks on everyday Americans. The ugly truth is that no leader, no system can protect you from everything. And the last thing I want is to be standing in line depending on help that may never come. When crisis hits, food is always the first casualty. Everyone needs it, and panic buying makes things worse. That's why I want to make sure my family's prepared with My Patriot Supply. Their 4-week emergency food kit gives you the nutrition you need to stay strong in a crisis. With 2,000 calories a day and 100% of your daily value of 12 essential vitamins and minerals, this kit keeps you going when every meal matters. Right now, they're offering $50 off their 4-week food kit. Go to mypatriotsupply.com. That is mypatriotsupply.com. mypatriotsupply.com to get your 4-week food kit today. That is mypatriotsupply.com. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are brought to you in part by My Patriot Supply. Joining us now is Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from the great state of Oklahoma. Senator, great to see you. Congratulations. Your friend Tulsi Gabbard is now the Director of National Intelligence. How did that happen? Big win.
It was huge win. In fact, she just texted me right now with a heart, and so we're super excited for her. I will tell you, Tulsi came up here and fought for every single yes vote. It's shameful that the Democrat Party, to which she was part of for so long, that's all about inclusion and diversity, right? Didn't care what she had to say, and then they come out and slam her when she was running for this, because you and I both know that if she was nominated by Biden, she would have sailed through, and the Democrats would have loved her. But that's not what it's about up here. Tulsi's going to be excellent. A lot of people, and Charlie, I know you know the history of it, and a lot of your listeners know the history of it, but DNI doesn't gather any intelligence. They were created after 9/11 to make sure that there was all the other 18 agencies that we gather intelligence from was actually sharing the information, and we could present the best information to the President of the United States. And Tulsi will be able to do that in an unredacted form, because underneath Director Hines, who was the director underneath the Biden administration, she just redacted everything, and Congress never got the information, and who knows who was getting it in the White House. I'm completely excited and ecstatic about what Tulsi is going to do with the intelligence agencies. It's so overdue.
Yeah, and so then today's also Bobby. Is that right? I mean, you've been doing these great social media videos that have kind of keeping me on pace. So is Bobby coming up today or tomorrow?
Yeah, so we already invoked cloture on Bobby. We think we can possibly strike a deal to have Bobby confirmed late tonight. Even though we voted on Tulsi at 11 o'clock today, Eastern time. The issue that we had was they didn't want to come in at 12:30 because the clock on her actually ran out at 12:33. So at 1 a.m. we started the 30-hour count on Bobby. So that 30 hours at that point will run out at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're going to vote on him at 7 a.m. or they're going to let us vote on him this evening so we can start the clock immediately then on I believe the next one will be either, I think Kelly will be the next one up, and then that 30 hours will start. What we're really discussing here, Charlie, I'll just kind of give you some inside baseball, is there's 12 Democrats that are wanting to leave to go to Munich Thursday night because they want to go to that, climate ordeal or whatever it is that's going on over there.
The swanky thing in Munich, that's right.
Yeah, the swanky thing that I'm not going to.
Good for you.
There's a real discussion that we've been having with Thune about saying that we've got to clear all these noms. We have 5 up today. We have this week we have Howard, Brooke, and Kelly left. And to clear all of them before they leave on Thursday. I think we should do it. I think we should hold that trip hostage for Democrats without saying go. But we have to get sign off on to do that too. We've got to talk to the director of Office Management and Budget has to sign off on it too, and so we have to work with the White House to make sure we can get that done. But Thune's all for it. If it's possible to do it, Thune's all for it, saying if you want to go, release Howard, Kelly, and Brooke, and we'll move forward with it.
I mean, I don't think this is a close call, Senator. I mean, you and I agree. I mean, they want to go wine and dine with the European elites and oligarchs on taxpayer money. We're not going to put up with these kind of holds. We're not going to do this. I know that the Senate is a very, collegial. We're going to look out for you. But come on, this is I think that's a little outrageous. You want to go party in Munich? Give us our nominees.
Yeah, and see, but like I said, the Thune can't do it on his own. It has to takes a little bit of collaboration from the White House too to do this, and so it really depends on if they want to fight on this that much. Because at the end of the day, the president can ground the planes. He did this to Pelosi. You remember when we were in a shutdown and President Trump's first term, Pelosi was leaving on this huge Codell, and on their way to Andrews Air Force Base, the president canceled their trip and said you can't go. So the president ultimately is the one that has to close it. So the real thing is does he want to fight on this one and cause that kind of problem moving forward? There's a lot of politics behind it, but I'm saying yes. I say yes, pull it. Let's do it. Let's get all of them done.
I totally agree. And by the way, they're going to say, it's national security. Look, it's not national security. Okay, we got the vice president in Munich. We got Bessent in Ukraine. We got all of our best guys all over Europe negotiating. We don't need another 12 Democrat senators. I think that's a bunch of senators
flying in isn't going to change one thing, Charlie.
No, it's not. No, it's actually refreshing to hear a senator say that. So let me now ask about the federal judges. These judges are completely out of control. There was some breaking news. A federal judge has ruled, thankfully, actually one of the good decisions finally, that President Trump does in fact have constitutional authority to freeze or limit certain funding. This means the Trump White House can now withhold funding without the district court's prior approval. But there are other injunctions that are happening in the most radical senses, especially out of New York. in those districts that are so outrageous. Senator, I know this is a serious question, and so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there a threshold where impeachment of federal judges would be considered?
Yeah, the threshold's real high on that, and then I don't really know how much room we have in the Senate to do this. What I would like to see, and I proposed this, and actually when I was in the House, is to have a board set up, either a board that is made up of just our Supreme Court justice, that when a district judge in this case is getting overruled on constitutional authority, then at so many times they get removed or get put on probation and then eventually get removed. Because we see this all the time, that judges are making decisions based on 100% political feelings. And that was where that's why our judges are supposed to be appointed, so they'd be above politics. But we find Republicans and Democrats, we judge shop all the time to try to find a judge that's going to be favorable to us. If it would just be simply based on constitutional authority, period, and not your opinion or your political opinion, then we'd be fine with that. But there's got to be some accountability that's brought to these judges that are appointed to a lifetime bench, because otherwise we're going to continue and it's going to just get worse. So Congress is going to have to take a hard look at this. The White House is going to take a hard look at this. This should be honestly bipartisan. If we try to do it on a partisan basis, we'll be opening a whole can of worms. If we do this on a bipartisan basis and actually be able to hold these judges accountable, much like our constituents are supposed to hold us accountable, then I think you'll see a lot more clarity happen in the courts. The DOJ, Department of Justice, is supposed to be really for the people. I mean, the House is for the people, Congress is for the people, but the courts is what holds the executive branch and the legislative branch accountable for the people, because it's supposed to interpret 100% our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. And unfortunately, you're seeing political rulings come off the bench more often than you actually see constitutional rulings.
Well, and to reiterate that point, we saw this in Brazil and to a lesser extent in Israel, where a weaponized judiciary basically runs the entire country. And the sovereign aren't there, and you kind of have a philosopher king ruling class, a legal oligarchy that starts to set in. And Brazil is the best example, Israel to a lesser extent. And so can you explain more of what your idea is, just so I understand it, of how we could prevent that?
Well, what our ideal is so you use this judge that just got overruled, and you say, okay, well, this is strike one. You just got overruled, constitutionally speaking, so you didn't interpret it correctly. Give us your findings. What made you decide to do this? Have a higher court actually go over his findings and say, this is how I made the decision. This was the opinions I came up with, and this is the opinions I based it on, either previous case law or constitutional purposes. And if he can't explain that, how he came up with that, and it actually made sense, then he gets brought up to a higher court to say, do you get put on probation? Strike one, strike two, or strike three before you get on probation. If you continue down that road, then you're going to be put in what I mean by probation. At that point, you'll have another court overlooking your decisions, and you're going to have to explain those decisions prior to them being made. That's what probation would look like. If you continue down that road, once you get on probation, then you'll be removed from the bench. So it's the same thing as impeaching them, but it's not. The impeachment has been used for political power now. This would be the courts holding the courts accountable. So judges holding judges accountable, much like lawyers with the Bar Association holds lawyers accountable.
Well, and just to reiterate the point, we have more than 200 district court judges. It is not sustainable to our republic for every random district judge to think their gavel gives them the power to veto over a presidency.
Yeah, that's right. The president of the United States, to be able to override the president of the United States, a district judge can uphold that hearing. That should be stopped itself. So, what level does that need to be heard at? Is it Supreme Court that needs to be taking up these decisions? The problem with you having a Supreme Court decision, then there's no court to go over them. So there is a balance that has to be made. And Charlie, honestly, I haven't even put a lot of thought in that one.
So the President Trump's team is moving at a rapid pace. As I mentioned, the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, is in Ukraine. President Trump had a favorable and promising phone call with Putin this morning. But a minute and a half, Senator, your thoughts on the developing diplomacy happening between Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. I mean, we got a lot going on here. Help me understand it.
The greatest president we had seen in our lifetime, Charlie, I put myself in your category. I really don't know how old you are, but it was Ronald Reagan. And he believed in peace through strength. And he was able to bring down the USSR by being friends with Gorbachev and brought down the wall, right? And what you see with President Trump is he's not necessarily being friends with Putin, but he's keeping a relationship and a dialogue with him, and he believes in peace through strength, and he's willing to use strength if peace doesn't work. Biden was never in this position to be able to do it because there was no respect for Biden. There was no respect for him because he was trying to use appeasement through strength and appeasement through diplomacy. It doesn't work that way. And so President Trump, by being able to talk directly to Putin, will be able to bring an end to the war, because he'll also be able to say, listen, Zelensky, you're going to have to compromise somewhere in this. The war's not going great for you. We're not going to continue to fund this. There's been a lot of questions about it. Maybe Crimea isn't going to be part of Ukraine much any longer. I'm not saying that's part of it, but I believe there's a compromise and a negotiation to end the killing over there, and that's what President Trump wants to do, is end the killing. And Putin isn't in a good position because he knows he has a new sheriff in the White House, and it's called President Trump.
Senator, keep up the great work. Thank you as always, and do what you can to make sure that a vacation to Munich doesn't get in the way of our cabinet. Thank you, Senator.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charlie.
ReliefFactor.com, is that right? 100% drug-free Relief Factor. They've been great supporters of our show for quite some time. Check it out right now at ReliefFactor.com. When you hear the term living better, what do you think about? More money, a bigger house, maybe a yacht? But what about how you feel physically? How do you wake up each day? How you sleep? What activities you can and cannot do? When you feel good, life is good. So if pain is affecting your life, see how Relief Factor can help. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that fights pain naturally, developed by doctors, so give their 3-week quick start a try. It's only $19.95, less than $1 a day. Go to ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. We have at least 5 people that could be a president that are working on behalf of the American people. I'll explain after the break.
Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody. The American Comeback Tour, which is my return to college campuses, begins next Thursday. What is the cut for that? And it's presented by TPUSA Tours and YRefi at yrefi.com. Let's go to cut 91, and then I'll go through the stops. Play cut 91.
Why do you think other countries aren't judged for having a strict immigration policy?
I was born as a man, and now I'm a woman.
What do you think the biggest threat is to the United States currently?
There's a reason that a lot of the black community doesn't have a father, and it's because of systemic racism.
America is the only country where even those who hate it refuse to leave. That's how you know you live in a great country. It's time that we start talking to the next generation, not talking down to the next generation. And that's what we're doing. So it begins next Thursday at the University of South Florida. Week after that, I'll be at the University of Florida. Then after that, the day after that, Florida State University. And then it continues over 19 stops, AmericanComebackTour.com. Stay right there. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I want to take a step back. I just want you to see what's happening. You have 4, maybe 5 people, all of which immediately would be a far better president than anything Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is. And this kind of team of all-stars does not come together very often. What President Trump has selected and assembled is remarkable. You got J.D. Vance giving a 10 out of 10 speech at the AI Summit in Paris, France. 10 out of 10. J.D. Vance speech in Paris, France. And then he's going to the Munich Security Conference. You got Scott Bessent, who is going to Ukraine to help negotiate an end to all the killing. And then you have Marco Rubio, front lines negotiating the release of hostages, as we have here on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Also, Marco Rubio solving all this Guatemalan, El Salvadorian, Honduran nonsense, getting all those countries in order and in place, like Colombia and many others. And then, on top of that, you got Kristi Noem laying down the hammer with Tom Homan against the illegal invasion. Do you know what's not getting a lot of headlines? And do you know this is the brilliance of Elon Musk and President Trump? Do you notice they're attacking Elon more than President Trump? It's almost like a media diversionary tactic. And just so we're clear, there is plenty of precedent for what Elon Musk is doing as well. From Harry Hopkins to Bernard Baruch, who basically was an outside Elon Musk industrialist who came and ran the industrial capacity during World War II. But you have this entire team of rock stars. Elon, Bessent, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and then on top of it, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth. Do you know what Pete Hegseth was doing yesterday morning? Pete Hegseth woke up at the crack of dawn, 0500, as they say in the military world, and did PT with our nation's most chiseled warriors. That's right. Pete Hegseth was up at 0500 doing weights in a parking lot, running PT. By the way, this leadership team is all people that I don't care what's said about them. Can we get the compare and contrast of Pete Hegseth and Lloyd Austin? Do we have the video, by the way, of him doing the workout? Of Pete Hegseth doing a workout alongside our troops? You have Lloyd Austin, who could not even walk up the stairs without losing his breath. You got Mark Milley, who is at least 100 pounds overweight. And then you got Pete Hegseth winning the morale of the troops. Imagine if you are an enlisted Marine in Germany. Imagine if you are a Marine in Germany, and all of a sudden, the Secretary of Defense shows up to start lifting weights with you. And it wasn't just weights. He did the whole regimen and routine. That's your Secretary of Defense. And meanwhile, you had Lloyd Austin, who's a joke and an insult to all of our senses, who had to be hospitalized secretly and privately. Well, let's get these images up on screen in the chat here. You got Hegseth running miles in the morning. Meanwhile, you got Marco Rubio saying, nope, no more invasion from Nicaragua. This is a team of rock stars, the Avengers Squad. And then you got Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI. If they can't even focus their fire on one of these people. And there it is, Pete Hegseth right there. He did the full workout with our best and brightest. You think Lloyd Austin could do that? I don't think Lloyd Austin could shake that many hands without having to capsize over. That guy needed a wheelchair for half of his tenure. And look at these. Pete Hegseth lifting the weights, doing the work. The media couldn't even find a way to mock this. Go to the next image. Hegseth running right there in the morning. That guy's like a Hulk. He did the whole program, and he'll continue to do that. That's how you win over the rank and file. And now this is becoming like legend amongst the military. The guys in the military can't stop talking about this. They're just blowing me up. They're blowing people up, guys I know. This is the coolest thing ever. We have the most insane person in the military. This is 113, your new director of national intelligence. Oh, it's just, okay, got it. And by the way, enlistment is going off the charts. There's Tulsi Gabbard on radio. You don't see that, but Lloyd Austin couldn't do that. Mark Milley couldn't do that. It's such a morale reset. And you can rest easy that we have this incredible team of qualified, ambitious patriots that are saving Western civilization. And it's not just Trump. Trump has empowered this energized force. And we're only 3 weeks in. Second hour coming up.
You asked, and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeart Media.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app, and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAV anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
RAV on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are. From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite RAV hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. RAV is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the RAV movement.
Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. President Trump has a new director of national intelligence. Now the Democrat-turned-Trump supporter Tulsi Gabbard has been confirmed. The former Hawaii congresswoman brings military experience to the job as well, having served in the Hawaii Army National Guard, including deployments to Iraq and Kuwait. As director of national intelligence, Gabbard will oversee America's 18 different intelligence agencies. Despite initial skepticism, Gabbard won confirmation by a slim 52-48 margin. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky was the lone Republican to vote no. The House Subcommittee on the Department of Government Efficiency is off to a flying start after holding its first hearing on Capitol Hill today. The committee is chaired by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
We were each elected to serve and represent the American people and how their hard-earned tax dollars are spent. We as Republicans and Democrats can still hold tightly to our beliefs, but we are going to have to let go of funding them in order to save our sinking ship.
Today's hearing focused on Medicaid spending and what the Georgia Republican describes as, quote, rushing pandemic-era funding out the door without proper oversight mechanisms. The committee is expected to work hand-in-hand with President Trump and his team to root out waste, to fix broken payment systems, and to investigate fraud schemes. Democrats are pointing out concerns about Elon Musk's influence in the federal government and potential conflicts of interest. Meantime, DOGE leader Elon Musk is continuing to make headlines as he continues to find fraud, waste, and abuse in the government. He and his crew have also been recommending hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts from government agencies while also laying off government workers. The billionaire joined President Trump in the Oval Office on Tuesday for a status update and to describe the systemic problems that are costing American taxpayers.
You know, we're looking at, if you look at, say, Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks.
President Trump and Musk say that some government employees have even been getting wealthy on the backs of U.S. taxpayers. Meantime, House Republicans are expected to unveil the text of a budget plan as soon as today. They're playing catch-up as Senate Republicans are already out with a plan that would allocate $340 billion in additional border security and defense spending. Once House and Senate Republicans hammer out their respective spending plans, the final product is expected to include trillions of dollars in tax cuts as well. While the House is putting the finishing touches on its budget plan, the Senate Budget Committee is meeting today and tomorrow to discuss directing the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs to allocate $175 billion for more border and defense spending. The Senate Armed Services Committee could spend up to $150 billion. Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency continuing to find places to save you and your tax dollars. One of those places is the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. The federal research agency tracks the progress of America's students, and it's being hit with around $900 million in cuts from DOGE.
What we're doing is good and right for the American people. What DOGE is doing is making sure that your taxpayer dollars, all of us, are spent in the way that they're intended to be spent, and that they're in America's interest, and they're financially responsible with the precious taxpayers' money. We have a $36 trillion federal debt, and we have got to get a hold of these things.
As for the Institute of Education Sciences, it could be eliminated altogether after at least 169 contracts were terminated this week, accounting for much of the Institute's work. The Institute authors the annual NAEP assessment, which is known as the nation's report card. It also puts out the College Store Card, which is a database of university costs and of outcomes. So those are some of your headlines of the day. We are also standing by for the next press briefing at the White House. In fact, we're expecting that to happen at any moment. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt will be speaking on some of the issues we just talked about. DOGE will very likely be an issue she'll have to answer a number of questions about. She'll probably also talk about the newly freed American who was held by Russia, Mr. Fogle. His story, of course, making lots of headlines as his mother is the one who pushed President Trump to act in order to free him, and he is now back home, having met with President Trump last night at the White House. So that is likely going to be a story that she'll talk about and that she'll get lots of questions. Also, you may know that yesterday President Trump met with the King of Jordan and talked about his plan for bringing peace to the Middle East. That includes resettling Gaza and rebuilding that war-torn community. So that's likely also going to be something that the press secretary speaks about. You can see the reporters on site here. They are ready and waiting for her to enter the room. We, of course, will have live coverage the moment she does enter the room and take the podium there at the White House as this third, I believe it is, or fourth press briefing of this new Trump administration is set to get underway here in a matter of minutes. Again, we will take you there live here in short order. That's going to do it for your headlines. We're going to get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show now. And again, the moment that press briefing happens, we'll take you there live.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. As a reminder, I will be going to University of South Florida a week from tomorrow. We are back on campus. I'm really excited for this one. University of South Florida, February 20th in Tampa, Florida. AmericanComebackTour.com. That is AmericanComebackTour.com. We're going to be going all across the country. So on February 20th, University of South Florida, February 27th, University of Florida, February 28th, Florida State University, April 8th. I know it's a big jump because there'll be a lot fit in the middle. University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, April 22nd at Texas A&M, April 24th at University of Wyoming, and more to be announced soon. Joining us now is Will Hild, Executive Director of Consumers Research. He also has the website clevelandclinicexposed.com. That is clevelandclinicexposed.com. Will, welcome to the program. You have a very powerful Twitter post saying, "Is Cleveland Clinic the wokest hospital in America?" Will, your thoughts?
Well, they very well be. They seem to have integrated wokeness into across the entire spectrum of activities, from integrating in DEI into everything they do. They're currently being sued for discriminating against patients. This isn't just discriminating in against hiring and promotion, which is normally what we think about when we think about DEI. This is about discriminating in how they apply medicines and treatment to patients, which is about the worst thing you could possibly think of when you think of horror stories of DEI. They've also integrated net zero pledges across their entire operations. This raises costs for consumers. They've set some of the most aggressive net zero achievements I've ever seen. There's no way to do that with modern technology, especially with hospitals. Almost everything is plastic. What that really means is that they're paying bribes, things called carbon credits, that they then have to pass along those fees to consumers. And then lastly, and perhaps the most disturbing thing, is that they have been leading the way in providing so-called transgender care, gender affirmative care to children. What that really means is genital mutilation on kids under the age of 18. And they've really been charging on that. And even after the passage of the SAFE Act in Ohio, where that's supposed to be banned, they've continued to consult with children around their gender issues or their gender dysphoria. So it seems that they are still continuing to quietly push this far left transgender propaganda that harms children.
Look, the hospital cartels generally are one of the greatest undiagnosed problems in the country. So help me understand this. So the Cleveland Clinic, why are they so interested in the trans propaganda, performing child sex changes, prioritizing race-based care? What is it? Is it an ideological issue? Please help me understand.
That's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer to that. I have my suspicions after what we've seen out of the Department of Government Efficiency that a lot of this might just be straight up being paid for by the federal government, incentivized by funding from the HHS. Radicals within a lot of these government agencies have been pushing this stuff, but that doesn't let Cleveland Clinic off the hook. Their director of DEI has said that they integrate DEI into literally every single thing that they do. So that's not just, again, hiring, promotion. That's in how they treat patients based on their skin color. And that includes, pushing transgender propaganda on children. So it's sort of a chicken or the egg problem. It probably came partially because it's being incentivized by the federal government. But then Cleveland Clinic has become taken over by true believers of this radical far left destructive ideology.
How much money do they make off of the transing of kids?
Well, it's hard to calculate without seeing their books, but it's got to be in the millions of dollars. The number of children these operations are not cheap. These hormones are not cheap. That's what a lot of people don't realize is that this stuff, once you start it, you can basically never come off of it. So Big Pharma has a customer for life when they trans a child under the age of 18. These children can basically never come off of it. We've heard of kids, obviously, who detransition. It's a very painful process, and there's everlasting harms that you can't undo. But from the hospital's perspective and from Big Pharma's perspective, it's a very lucrative venture.
What can we possibly do from a federal government or a regulatory standpoint to go after these childhood butcher clinics, such as the Cleveland Clinic?
That's a fantastic question. I was so excited to see President Trump's executive order demanding that every agency look for at least 9 corporations or nonprofits to look into who are violating people's civil rights around DEI. I can think of no better candidate for HHS to open an investigation than the Cleveland Clinic. That said, I would also ask that the state government, Governor DeWine, and the legislature really look closely at the Cleveland Clinic and everything it's doing to continue to push this radical transgender ideology on children and harm them, and also to violate people's civil rights, not just through, again, hiring and promotion, but also literally changing where you rank someone in treatment for illness, strokes specifically, based on their skin color.
So Will, in your experience, what do these hospitals actually fear? Because they're acting with such brazen attitude, as if they don't care what the law says, and just such blatant disregard for general morality.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question, because our movement tends to have this mentality that we go to court and we get a judicial ruling, and that precedent that sides with us is the win. In this case, it's very clear. The pain must be the precedent. We need to sue these organizations. They need to lose federal funding until they comply. And they need to be sued when they discriminate against people, not just patients, but also their employees. There has to be a price to this kind of wanton disregard for the law, both at the state and the federal level. So that's, at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to make them change is cutting off funding, losing government grants, and then being sued for the way they've violated the civil rights of both their patients and their employees.
Will, how can people learn more, and please share your website?
Certainly. Well, they can follow us at Consumers First on X, or me with @WillHild, or they can visit us at consumersresearch.org. I would also just say, to the extent you have listeners who are current or former employees at Cleveland Clinic, please go to our website. There's a place where you can share your story. I'm sure, are only looking at the tip of the iceberg. We would love to hear from people who've maybe seen inside what's going on there and could fill in even more some of these questions we have.
Thank you so much, Will. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Email me, freedom@charliekirk.com. The meltdown over DOGE is really amazing to see. Right now, there's an entire hearing around the Department of Government Efficiency. And understand that what Elon is doing is well within the confines of the U.S. Constitution. They're going to sue every possible way they can. But there have been presidential advisors that have literally lived in the White House. Harry Hopkins under FDR, under World War I and World War II, the industrial baron of Bernard Baruch. Here is some breaking news as well. President Trump has just posted on Truth Social. I just spoke to Zelensky of Ukraine. The conversation went very well. He liked President Putin. He, like President Putin, wants to make peace. We discussed a variety of topics having to do with the war, but mostly the meeting that is being set up in Munich, where Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead the delegation. I'm hopeful that the results of the meeting will be positive It is a time to stop this ridiculous war where there has been massive and totally unnecessary death and destruction. God bless the people of Russia and Ukraine. And as I've mentioned a couple times, we have the Mark Fogle situation. Just incredible. We can actually play some tape there of President Trump getting Mark Fogle from home. I think we have some B-roll. Do we have? Yeah. This is Mark Fogle being released. Let's play cut 96.
What were the terms of this deal, Mr. President?
Very fair, very fair, very reasonable, not like deals you've seen over the years. They were very fair, and I think that's going to lead, and somebody else is being released tomorrow that you will know of.
And now cut 99.
This is what happens when you have a strong president, and that's what we're seeing. And look, anytime an American comes home, we should be excited about it. This is a case that languished under the Biden administration. Now, legend, infamous, rally in Butler, right the same day the president was almost killed. And so tonight is really a happy occasion. Should be for all Americans, but certainly for Mr. Fogle and his family.
He's bringing Americans home. Really makes you wonder, what was Joe Biden doing and his entire team doing these last couple of years? This news flow is incredible, by the way. That's why you have to subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. That's why you have to stay involved, watch us every day, download the Real America's Voice app. We are the kind of air traffic control of all the different news. You got Trump on the phone with Putin, Trump on the phone with Ukraine. We got peace coming in the Middle East. We got peace coming between Russia, Ukraine. We have secretaries being confirmed. We are the tip of the spear here on the Charlie Kirk Show. We'll synthesize all of it so you guys hear what you guys get what you need to hear. Okay, conservatives for lower health care. Let me find my notes here.
We're interrupting this program for a special live report.
Let's get you straight to the White House, where the latest press briefing is now getting underway. Caroline Leavitt.
I have a couple of updates for you this morning, or this afternoon. As you know, this morning, the president spoke to President Putin of Russia. They spoke at length, and the president released a statement following that conversation in great detail. I can also confirm that the president just recently got off the phone with President Zelensky of Ukraine. His truth is as follows. I just spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine. The conversation went very well. He, like President Putin, wants to make peace. We discussed a variety of topics having to do with the war, but mostly the meeting that is being set up on Friday in Munich, where Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead the delegation. I am hopeful that the results of that meeting will be positive. It is time to stop this ridiculous war where there has been massive and totally unnecessary death and destruction. God bless the people of Russia and Ukraine. I myself just spoke to the president about these calls, and he told me to tell all of you they were very good calls, they were very positive, and the administration is wholeheartedly committed to a peace deal to end once and for all the Russia-Ukraine war. More on that later. I'm sure you'll have more questions to ask. This week, the president has continued to deliver on his promises to the American people. According to new polling that was released at the beginning of this week by CBS News, an overwhelming 70% of Americans said that President Trump is following through on what he pledged to do during his historic campaign. The poll also revealed that Americans see President Trump as a tough, energetic, focused, and effective leader fighting hard to improve their lives and our country. And yesterday, in particular, was a truly special day for the United States of America. Thanks to the great leadership of President Trump and the strong and tough leadership of President Trump, Mark Fogle, an American teacher detained by Russia, was returned to American soil and met with the president here at the White House last night. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the rest of President Trump's incredible national security team helped to negotiate the exchange that secured Mark Fogle's release. This event shows a good faith effort from Russia, and it's a sign, as I just said, that we are moving in the right direction to end this brutal war. Malphine Fogle, Mark's 95-year-old mother, was understandably very worried that she would never see her son again after his arrest in 2021. Mrs. Fogle was actually slated to join President Trump on stage at the July 13th Butler, Pennsylvania rally to speak out for Mark, and then the infamous assassination attempt against President Trump took place. But that day, before the rally, President Trump promised Mark's mother that when he returned to the White House, he would bring her son home. God saved President Trump's life on that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now Mark Fogle is back home safely with his family as a result. God is good. The president also continues to bring back common sense to our government. This week, he signed an EO to end the procurement and forced use of paper straws. Taxpayer dollars were wasted on these non-functional and massively unpopular products for no other reason than it made radical activists feel good about themselves. And on trade, President Trump continues to take bold action to protect America's critical steel and aluminum industries, much like he did in his first term. And the president signed proclamations to close existing loopholes and exemptions to restore a true 25% tariff on steel and elevate the tariff on aluminum to 25% as well. This administration believes these tariffs will protect our national security and put American workers first. And in the Oval Office yesterday with Elon Musk, President Trump took further action to make our federal government more efficient and effective. He signed an EO implementing the DOGE Workforce Optimization Initiative. Now agency heads will coordinate and consult with DOGE to significantly shrink the size of the federal workforce and limit hiring to essential positions only. The unaccountable bureaucracy will finally be reined in. On another important matter this morning, Senate Republicans continued to confirm President Trump's exceptionally qualified nominees, most recently Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who will be joining us later at the White House for her swearing-in ceremony. It's imperative that the remainder of the president's cabinet nominees are confirmed as quickly as possible. On another important matter this week, illegal alien criminals continue to be arrested and sent home as part of the ongoing mass deportation effort of the Trump administration. Just this week, 2 planes with 190 Venezuelan illegal aliens arrived in the Venezuelan capital from Fort Bliss, Texas. Here are some of the criminal illegal aliens who were arrested in the country this past week. ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Nigeria who had been convicted of money laundering. ICE San Antonio arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of assault. ICE Denver arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. And ICE Houston arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. Now, before I take questions, I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts. 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted. So here in our new media seat today, we have Chris Pavlovsky, an entrepreneur who has a strong passion for protecting freedom of speech. Chris started the video sharing platform Rumble in 2013 with a mission of protecting a free and open internet from censorship by big tech and governments around the globe. The platform has always been a place for independent creators to share their authentic opinions, and they have always included President Trump, in contrast to the way he was censored by other platforms in years past. Since its founding, Rumble has grown exponentially, recently marking 67 million monthly active users. It's a lot of users. If you're watching right now and interested in sitting in this seat, you can apply, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. With that, I will take your questions. And Chris, why don't you kick us off on this very busy news day?
Carolyn, thank you very much to you and President Trump. It's an honor to be sitting here in the new media seat for the White House press briefing and to be able to demonstrate why freedom of expression is so important. Rumble was the victim of censorship at the hands of multiple foreign governments. It's clear there are still many countries who oppose free speech and even target American companies. Can you describe what the administration will do to protect U.S. interests and values worldwide?
Sure. Well, thanks for the very important question. And I think that free speech and ending censorship, both here at home and also abroad, is an important part of President Trump's agenda. I think first, President Trump has led by example on this front as the leader of the free world, the president of the United States, with his show of access and transparency on a daily basis. The president takes questions from all of you almost every single day and really reveals what he's thinking and feeling, and I think that serves as a great example to the rest of the world. As for tangible actions that the president has signed, he did sign an executive order, I believe on day one, certainly within the first week of this administration, to restore free speech and stop government-sponsored censorship here at home. And the EO made it very clear that federal employees are not allowed to engage in any activity that would infringe upon the American people's right of free expression. So I think the president has led quite strongly on this. And I would just add, this is part of the reason we have a new media seat, to invite new voices into this room. Again, we're going to need to expand this room because so many people are interested, and we're very excited about that. It's a privilege to cover this White House, but we want all voices to be heard. So thanks for being us with here, Chris, and I hope you enjoy the briefing. Sure. Jordan.
Thanks, Caroline. Data out this morning showed that consumer prices were up across a variety of goods, and just before that report, though, President Trump called for lower interest rates. The Fed said it's holding rates steady to try and tamp down further inflation. So how would lowering rates help keep inflation in check for the American people?
Sure. Well, first of all, on the inflation point, we did receive those numbers, and they were worse than expected, which tells us that the Biden administration indeed left us with a mess to deal with. It's far worse than I think anybody anticipated, because unfortunately the previous administration was not transparent in where the economy truly was. We know people at this very podium told the American people that inflation was transitory and that it would go away. That was not the case. And now the last report of the Biden administration, as revealed today, shows that inflation is still about 4.5% higher over the past 3 months. This is an indictment on the Biden administration's mismanagement of the inflation crisis and their lack of transparency in addressing it. As for tackling inflation and interest rates, the president has made his position on this very clear. He wants interest rates to be lower, he wants inflation to be lower, and he believes that the whole of government economic approach that this administration is taking will result in lower inflation. I have said that from this podium many times. The president had record low interest rates and inflation rates in his first term. He believes that the economy can handle it and withstand it. And we're doing a lot to tackle the inflation effort on this front. It's a whole of government economic approach, and I've talked about what we're doing to tackle inflation quite a few times from this podium.
Can you update us on reciprocal tariffs? That's going to come before Prime Minister Modi's visit tomorrow.
I do believe it will come before the Prime Minister's visit tomorrow, and I will let the president discuss the details on the reciprocal tariff front. But this is something he believes strongly in, and it's very simple logic as to why the president wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated, and far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long, and that's why the president believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security. JJ.
On DOGE and the fraud claims, Elon Musk in the Oval yesterday gave us some information on that. We're just wondering if there's some proof, evidence. Is the White House willing to share evidence of those fraud claims, or can Elon Musk come to the briefing room and share material evidence of what he's talking about?
Sure. I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to DOGE. President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what DOGE is doing doing. There is an X account with the DOGE handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a daily basis. They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are reviewing and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped from going out the door. And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency. As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that DOGE found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOGE identified. I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one, $57,000 for climate change in Sri Lanka. What is this doing to continue the interests of the American people? Absolutely nothing. These are the line items across the federal government that DOGE is identifying daily. They're moving very fast. There's a lot of paper that we can show you, but we're happy to do it. This administration has been more than transparent about what DOGE is doing. And here's one of their tweets that they posted about the mine. I believe this is in Pennsylvania, where the federal employee retirement system is being processed. Did anybody know this was even happening in our country before Elon Musk talked about it in the Oval Office yesterday? A lot of Americans didn't. So we are providing transparency and accessibility on a daily basis when it comes to DOGE. And I also have a DOGE daily report, if anybody would like it, on all of the things that they are identifying and finding. We're happy to provide this information to you. We're talking about it every single day.
Are all those things you just mentioned fraud, or are they waste, or are they just contrary to the president's policies?
I would argue that all of these things are fraudulent, they are wasteful, and they are an abuse of the American taxpayer's dollar. This is not what the government should be spending money on. It's contrary to the president's priorities and agenda. And again, we can continue to provide you the receipts for all of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And if anybody in here wants to argue that the federal government is not fraudulent in some capacity, be my guest, because I think the American people watching at home would beg to differ.
Caroline.
Mary.
Hey, more on the judges. Does the White House believe the courts have the authority to issue these nationwide injunctions?
We believe that the injunctions that have been issued by these judges have no basis in the law and have no grounds, and we will, again, as the president said very clearly yesterday, comply with these orders, but it is the administration's position that we will also ultimately be vindicated, and the president's executive actions that he took were completely within the law, they were constitutional, and we look forward to the day where he can continue to implement his agenda. And I would just add, it's our view that this is the continuation of the weaponization of justice that we have seen against President Trump. He fought it for 2 years on the campaign trail. It won't stop him now. Brian.
Yes. I want to go back to DOGE just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marjorie Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some of this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us, unfortunately. I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing. Those are the things that DOGE is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody in this room, this is what President Trump campaigned on doing. He's delivering on a promise that 77 million people elected him to do. James.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Two foreign policy questions, if I may.
Sure.
First, the statement that was released after this morning's phone calls identified Mr. Witkoff as the special envoy who will be part of the delegation that undertakes to resolve the Russia-Ukraine war. I had thought that individual was General Kellogg, and so can you clear that up?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you mentioned, the president, in his truth, following the phone call with Vladimir Putin, said that he has asked Secretary of State Rubio, the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, our national security advisor here at the White House, Michael Watts, and Steve Witkoff to lead the negotiations. As for General Keith Kellogg, he remains a critical part of this team in this effort. He's played a tremendous role in getting the negotiations to this point, and he's very much still part of the Trump administration.
The other subject is Iran. I took note of President Trump's comments in his Super Bowl interview with our colleague Brett Baer to the effect that he wants to do a deal with Iran. However, that interview appeared after the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had already ruled out any additional negotiations with the United States. So kind of a two-part question. A, what gives the president any confidence that Iran will come to the table? And B, more fundamentally, why is the president interested in doing a deal with Iran instead of doing everything he can, perhaps short of U.S. military intervention, to try and hasten the end of what many of his own supporters regard as an evil regime?
Well, the president has made it very clear that he will never allow Iran to have nuclear capabilities. That is a red line that he has drawn, and he will not allow that to happen. But you asked why President Trump wants to make a deal. I would remind you, he's the master of the art of the deal. He is America's deal maker in chief. He leads from a position of securing peace through strength. And I think time and time again already, in just 4 weeks, we have seen the president being able to negotiate successful deals with our partners, our adversaries all around this world. The release of Mark Fogle just last night is something that I think speaks to the president's deal-making ability. This is something that the Biden administration allegedly tried to do for 3.5 years. I think you all should go back and ask some of those Biden administration officials what they even tried to do and why weren't they successful, because for 3.5 years, Mark Fogle sat in a Russian prison, and it took President Trump 3 weeks to get him back on American soil. There's nobody better at making deals than Donald Trump. Phil Wegman.
Thank you. Two foreign policy questions. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said after the war that he wants NATO membership or nuclear weapons. We heard Defense Secretary Hegseth say that NATO membership was unrealistic. What's the president's view on the other option, on a nuclear Ukraine?
I have not talked to President Trump about Ukraine's NATO membership or their nuclear capabilities. I would leave it to him to discuss. But I will tell you again that Secretary Rubio and also the Vice President, J.D. Vance, will be meeting directly with President Zelensky in Munich on Friday, and I'm sure they will provide a readout of that conversation and that discussion.
And then the second question, given that this administration has called on Europe to take more responsibility for their own defense, I'm wondering, will the EU or any other European nation other than Ukraine be involved in these peace talks?
I don't have any European nations who are involved currently to read out for you. Certainly, the president has employed a very strong team or deployed a very strong team to continue these negotiations. And the fact that he was on the phone with both President Putin and President Zelensky today shows that he's very much involved in this effort as well.
And then just a follow-up, I guess.
Sure.
Should we expect the president to negotiate in person with Zelensky and Putin?
I don't have anything to read out on that for you today. Maggie, good to see you.
Thanks for taking the question. You talked about the transparency with DOGE and Elon Musk's press availability yesterday. There is a conflict of interest law in place that says that people who have personal interests can't interact with government entities that could touch on those. Has President Trump signed a waiver for Elon Musk? Does such a thing exist? If it does, will you guys release it in the interest of transparency that he's committed to?
I have not seen the law that you are referring to. What I can tell you is that Elon Musk, as I've confirmed before, is a special government employee. He is filing the proper financial disclosure, and he is complying with all applicable federal laws. As you also heard, Elon addressed this directly yesterday in the alleged conflict of interest, and he said everything he's doing is very public, and if you all perceive a conflict of interest, you're welcome to bring that up. And as the president said if he feels like Elon is engaging in something that's a conflict of interest, he will tell Elon not to do that. And Elon also said yesterday that before he moves forward with anything, he consults with the President of the United States. So we're very confident with the ethics and the guardrails that have been put in place here. Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a few things for you, but on the commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective nations. Are there any preconditions that President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing some forces, withdrawing all forces, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was just talking with the president in our national security team. I wasn't made aware of any conditions, but if they exist, I'm happy to provide those.
And on the president himself, he styles himself as this master negotiator. He is now deploying these negotiations, saying that they start immediately. We did hear from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, though, today saying that NATO membership is not realistic for Ukraine and neither is returning to pre-2014 borders. Aren't they giving away bargaining chips before these negotiations have even started?
Again, I haven't talked to the president about Ukraine's NATO membership, and he appointed several individuals to negotiate on his behalf. He's directly involved in these negotiations as well, and I'm sure if you ask him that question in the near future, when you're able to, he'll give you an answer. I just don't want to get ahead of him on it.
And final thing for you, which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America. And it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. The prisoner exchange with Russia coming at the same time as the president is now announcing negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. The timing of that is hard to ignore. Was Ukraine discussed as part of this prisoner swap?
I was not involved in those discussions, so I can't comment on whether that came up or not. What I can say is that this was a very good deal for the United States of America and for the rest of the world. As you know, we have confirmed that the Russian who will be returning home very soon, Alexander Vinnik, was a non-violent crypto criminal, and as part of this exchange, he has forfeited more than $100 million that he obtained in that illegal crime. And in exchange, of course, we got Mark Fogle, who is a middle school teacher who kissed the American soil, but kissed the ground last night when he returned to the United States of America. It was a great deal and a great day for our country, and I think everybody, regardless of political affiliation, agrees with that.
And was Russia made aware ahead of time of the parameters that the administration and Secretary Hegseth was going to be announcing today?
The NATO parameters? Yes. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Secretary Hegseth in the Defense Department on that, since he announced them. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. Just to be clear, so when we're listening for a shift in position on U.S. policy, should we only listen to the president and maybe not the Secretary of Defense? Because what he outlined today would represent a shift in U.S. policy.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I speak for the President of the United States behind this podium, and I will let him discuss that.
Can you tell us any more about the next hostage releases? I understand another American's coming out today.
Sure. I'm glad you asked. It speaks to President Trump's deal-making ability, and we can confirm the safe release of one American and two individuals from Belarus, one of whom worked for Radio Liberty, immediately. Out of respect for the privacy of these individuals, their request, we have no further details to announce on their identities, but we can confirm that one American was released today, and it's a remarkable victory on the heels of Mark Fogle returning to America last night.
Anything on who the U.S. might be releasing in exchange?
I don't have details on that at this moment. I don't have details on that at this moment. I do know that these three individuals have been released and are on their way home to their respective countries.
Caroline, thank you so much. Can you explain how President Trump envisions the war in Russia and Ukraine coming to an end? Does he expect Ukraine to hand over all the territory in question?
Again, these negotiations are ongoing. I will allow the president to divulge any red lines that he may set, but I think as deals in the past have come to fruition, the president has proven one of the things that makes him a very effective negotiator is not revealing what he's anticipating from both sides, but he is at the forefront of these negotiations in addition to the very qualified individuals who he's tasked with speaking to both President Putin and President Zelensky.
And speaking of deals, a meeting with the President of the United States offers any foreign leader credibility. Was it part of the prisoner swap with Fogle that President Trump agreed to meet with Putin?
Again, I was already asked this question. I said I was not made aware of that, but we can certainly get you an answer on that. I'll check in with the NSC. Sure, Monica.
Thanks, Caroline. It's clear that this administration is dedicated to both truth and transparency. We know that with DOGE, but we also know that because this administration recently announced it's going to declassify the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, and RFK. I'm wondering, is it likely that we're going to see more information regarding the assassination attempts on the president's life while he was on the campaign trail?
In regards to the assassination of the individuals you mentioned, President Trump signed that executive order directing the respective agencies to do it. I know that that process continues and is ongoing. He's committed to transparency in the declassification of these very important files that I think many Americans are not only interested in learning about, but also have the right to know about. As for the two heinous assassination attempts on the president's life, he's spoken to this publicly. I've spoken to him about it privately. And, as he said publicly to all of you, he feels he has a right to know about further information about the individuals who tried to kill him, tried to take his life. And so if and when we get that information, I'll leave it up to the president to decide whether or not he would like to reveal it. But I believe in the effort of transparency that we've seen consistently from this president, he certainly will. Daniel.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask you about the $59 million that FEMA sent to New York City migrant hotels. Secretary Kristi Noem just put out a statement saying that she clawed back the full payment that FEMA activists unilaterally gave to NYC migrant hotels. She wrote, "Mark my words, there will not be a single penny spent that goes against the interest and safety of the American people." What does the response of the Trump administration send to any federal bureaucrats that are thinking about obstructing the president's agenda?
They will be held accountable. The president is signing executive orders daily, and he expects all officials across the administration, regardless if they are a political appointee or if they are a career bureaucrat, to adhere to the will of the American people and the 77 million Americans who re-elected President Trump. He's here for a reason, and he is focused every day on implementing his administration's goals, and sending $59 million to a migrant hotel to house illegal immigrants when there are still people in North Carolina and California who have not received FEMA funding is not something that this administration is going to tolerate. Deanna.
Thank you so much, Caroline. One on New York and one on Russia, please. On New York City Comptroller Brad Lander is accusing DOGE of clawing back $80 million that was intended for New York City FEMA funding. Wondering if you've heard about that figure, if that figure is accurate, and why that money was taken back.
I have not heard about that figure. DOGE is moving very quickly, but I can get the receipts and gladly send them to you. I know that story is likely of great interest to the New York Post.
And then one
John.
on Russia, please.
Sure.
Is President Trump waiting for a kind of signal or an action from Putin to go to Russia? And would he be willing to go to Ukraine in the future?
I don't have any decisions to make on the president's potential visit to Russia or any in-person meeting at this time. John.
Caroline, two questions, one on foreign policy, one on domestic policy. Following up on the president's call that he had with President Putin, does the president view Russia, does he view President Putin as an ally, as a partner, as a competitor, or as an adversary?
I believe this nation views Putin and Russia as a great competitor in the region, at times an adversary, but as the president has said as well, he enjoys having good diplomatic relationships with leaders around the world, finding that common ground, also calling them out when they are wrong, and leading from a position of peace through strength. That's the president's greatest strength, and we've seen that again, time and time again.
And then, as you pointed out in your statement regarding the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, there was one Republican who voted against the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. It was Senator Mitch McConnell. Similarly, how does the administration view Senator McConnell? Can he be a partner in the president's legislative agenda? Are you disappointed that he voted against not only Tulsi Gabbard, but also Pete Hegseth to be the defense secretary?
I think we're greatly disappointed in any Republican who chooses willfully to vote against the president's exceptionally qualified cabinet nominees and picks to lead his America First administration. Not a single Democrat swayed from voting against President Biden's nominees, and we know how many of them turned out. They turned out to be atrocious at their jobs, leaving America much worse than they were when they took the oath of office. And so I've said it repeatedly from this podium. I addressed it at the beginning of my remarks. We expect all Republicans to vote, to stay tough and strong, vote for President Trump's nominees so we can get to work and continue to work very hard to implement this president's agenda. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. On South Korea is currently in a chaotic situation. How does the President Trump react to the current chaotic situation in South Korea? Secondly, if South Korea needs help from United States, what role do you think the U.S. will play?
Sure. I haven't spoken to the president about the ongoing situation in South Korea. I would defer you to his previous statements. And I can also see if I can get you something new from the National Security Council, who I'm very confident the officials that are focused on South Korea are on this. I just haven't spoken to them about it, but I'm happy to provide that for you. Yes.
Thank you, Caroline. Does Elon Musk have power of the presidency?
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's a ridiculous question.
I asked that question because, the Democrats have been hurling insults at Elon Musk, hurling attacks, calling him President Musk. Most recently, Jamie Raskin, the congressman, took it a step further, calling for Musk's impeachment, saying that he somehow usurped the power of the presidency. What's your response?
It's utterly ridiculous. Elon Musk addressed this in the Oval Office yesterday. The president addressed it as well. Elon Musk is serving at the pleasure of the president, just like everybody else on this team. He takes directives directly from the president of the United States. And I think some of the comments that you referred to are nothing more than a failed attempt from the media and from Democrats to try to sow division in this White House. We saw them do it in the first term. We're not going to let them do it in the second term. This is a unified team who is working at the pleasure of the president to do what's right for the American people. I have one more quick housekeeping note before I leave you all today. The president wanted me to share with all of you that he had a wonderful meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan yesterday. They discussed many things, including the Gaza Strip and its future at great length. The king would much prefer that the Palestinians stay in place, with the additional land to be used for new development, which would greatly create jobs at levels never seen before. But the president feels it would be much better and more majestic if these Palestinians could be moved to safer areas. I would just add to that the president remains wholeheartedly committed to seeing peace in the Middle East, and our Arab partners in the region have been tasked with coming up with a peace plan to present to the president. That is ongoing. King Abdullah mentioned that yesterday. He also committed to accepting 2,000 sick children from the Gaza Strip, which the president called a beautiful gesture. So the administration continues to work with our Arab partners in the region. We stand closely with our ally Israel, and the president has presented this big, new, bold idea to secure peace in the Middle East, and he is not going to waver from that. And we look forward to seeing that goal of this administration achieved as well. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking there at the White House. Let's get you back to Charlie Kirk Show now.
This has been a live special report. We now join our programming already in progress.
As against DOGE. So when you think of, okay, we want Department of Government Efficiency, who could possibly against it? This is who's against it. What exactly do these people do all day long? They scream into a microphone against Elon Musk, singing Old slave hymns. Yes, they are comparing cutting government waste to slavery. And there's one more. We just got to it just ends perfectly. Just right on key. Play cut 135.
Don't take that government buyout. Don't listen to Trump's lies. Us workers haven't got a chance unless we organize. Oh, side are you on? Which side are you on?
It's white Whitney Houston. That's what it is. Just going right after. Look, the Democrat Party is flailing right now. They are flailing. Everything about the Democrat Party is off key, from their singing, from what they're talking about, from the essence of who they are. I mean, this is the threat to democracy, Dylan Mulvaney insists. Play cut 95.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
That is a constitutional crisis. That is a crisis for our democracy.
We've got our toes right on the edge of a constitutional crisis here.
And what we are witnessing is a constitutional crisis.
To defy court orders brings about a constitutional crisis.
We've moved from a constitutional crisis to a constitutional collapse.
These are the same guys that climate change is going to kill everybody. You need every single possible shot during COVID. I mean, it is like every possible apocalyptic thing that they can engage. The constitutional collapse. Being a liberal is just so insanely uncool right now. It's remarkable compared to 2008, where all the cool kids were Democrats and Obama people and then eventually Bernie people. It's just, you just lived on the left. And you just think of what it means to be a Democrat now. You're just a shrill hall monitor screaming at other people about democracy. They have spent down their cultural bank account. Their cultural cachet has been totally squandered. But whose side are you on? I'll tell you, I'm on the side of not that. That's whose side. Whatever their politics are, I'm on the opposite. That's whose side I'm on. See you guys tomorrow.
You asked and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeart Media.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAV anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
RAV on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite RAV hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. RAV is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the RAV movement.
What happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare?
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is Tulsi Gabbard has enough votes to become the next Director of National Intelligence.
A durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure that the war will not begin again. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement.
President Trump's team laying out plans for reciprocal tariffs. Under the plan, the U.S. would charge other countries the same amount to import products into the U.S. as they charge to import U.S. products into their countries. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said they will start with the countries that the U.S. is running the biggest deficits with.
If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy.
You said these people don't know anything and they don't